Hey everybody, DIY Dad here. Sorry I'm in the basement, our furnace room, it's a little bit noisy, but today we're here because of that. E64 call service on our Frigidaire Affinity drying, clothes dryer, sorry. So we're gonna try to replace the heating coil, which is normally what causes this error. And yeah, let's get into it. Here we go. Now, first and foremost, obviously, you're gonna want to unplug your dryer before you do anything, and then you're gonna need to buy some parts. I'm gonna put a link to Amazon. I'm not recommending any specific manufacturer for this. Please go off your own. There is a kit, essentially from a couple different suppliers. It costs about 45 bucks. This is a pretty common error. And that kit is going to give you your heating element, which is that guy, as well as 2 of your sensors that could potentially be causing this problem. So it's gonna be one of these 3 things. This type of clothes dryer has what's called a 3-stage heating element. So there's 3 different coils in here and they're all controlled separately. And it allows the dryer to turn them on independently based on the need of what it's drying. So it can adjust the temperature that way versus having it come on, come off, come on, come off as often. What happens with the original heating elements in these is these will fail. They either get too hot and they'll warp and break, or they'll bend, and then one of these coils will touch the side, ground it out, and the whole system kind of collapses. And if that happens on the 2nd or 3rd stage, then sometimes your dryer will start, it'll run for about 10 minutes or so, and then when it goes to light up that stage is when the error comes in. Makes it really kind of annoying to troubleshoot. Either way, in order to get into it, we have to pull this dryer out of here, and we're going to have to take the back off, probably the lid off, and a few other things, and dig in. This is roughly under the drum, so I'm going to go step by step through this with you. Hopefully this will solve our problem, and we'll probably be cleaning out some lint as we go as well. Step 1, as I mentioned, is definitely going to be to first and foremost unplug this dryer, and then we're going to pull it out so we've got some room to work with, disconnect the dryer hose from the back for your exhaust, and we should be good to go. My dryer also has a steam setting in it, so I have a water fitting on the back that I need to disconnect as well. All of that's impossible to do while holding my camera, so we'll check in after that's done. Okay, so the dryer's pulled out. I've removed the dryer hose. We're unplugged from the wall. And now our next step is going to be to get into this. So we need to get the back cover removed. And to do that, we're gonna have to take off a fairly shocking number of screws. So there's 3 across the top that hold this bracket for the top piece. So we'll take those off. And then there's an additional set all the way down the side, all the way down underneath, and up around the back. There's about 12 of them, maybe 15 in total. There's also a few here in the middle that we're gonna have to remove. So catch those as well. But all Phillips, pretty simple. I'm just gonna grab my impact to go a little bit faster on this. But yeah, so we're gonna start and just kind of work our way around any of the screws that run through this piece of sheet metal. We're gonna be pulling off, and that should allow us to take this rear cover off. Okay, all 20 of the screws are removed, including this one right here to give us access to the electrical panel. So again, making sure that you are unplugged from the wall, double, triple check that. We're gonna then release these 3 Phillips screws. All right, once these 3 wires are released, you'll be able to access the ground wire, which is down here. Make sure you pull that one as well. Okay, on my dryer, because we also have the steam fitting, the cover's not gonna actually be able to hinge out of the way like it could if we didn't have that. So I'm gonna have to remove this because this piece goes over that one. So we're gonna pull these 2 Phillips screws. That should let me pull the cover off and get access to pull this whole thing off and back. Okay, the 2 screws are removed, so then to pull the cover out, you're actually gonna slide it straight back. So just kind of grab onto it here and give it a good tug. It's gonna free it, and then it can lift off and up. And then there's gonna be some cables on the inside we have to deal with. So let's check that out. So pull this cover off. Okay, so we have cables that are zip tied into this piece, which is what's holding everything down. I'm not gonna worry about removing those. What I'm gonna do is pull this screw and this screw, so that this whole cover piece can just lift up and out of the way, and that'll let the back come free. All right, so that's free. That can just sit up like that and out of the way. And then again, this will come right off now that it's loose. So we'll take this off and set it aside as well. One thing just of note, so there's a pretty big pile of screws that came out of this. They're all exactly the same for all of this body stuff. The screws to hold the wires in are a little bit different, but everything else is the same. So don't worry about mixing up what went where so much. They're all the same length, same thread, same everything else. Just set them off to the side so you don't lose them. All right, I'm gonna move some of this stuff out of the way just to give myself some room to work. We'll get underneath and see if we can't see where that heating element is. All right, so now that everything is out of the way, we can come down here. And this is what we're looking to replace, this heating element. So you can see there's a couple screws that go from this back panel into it. We're gonna have to take those out. And then to give it room for this to lift back as well, there are a few screws, I believe, inside the drum that point back into this, maybe one, that we have to pull to let this be free enough that we can pull it back and out of the way and get this loose. So just feeling around the side, looks like there's just the one screw on this side. And then a lot of lint that we can clean out of here as well. This dryer is about 10 years old, so it's had some time to build up a bit. All right, so I vacuumed out the bottom here so we can see this a little bit better. And I did take the one screw out of the side. This was a longer screw than we've seen before, so I'm setting that one aside to know that that goes back in here when we're done. And with this vacuumed out, I can actually now see there's a bracket holding this in place. It has two Phillips head screws, one right there and one over there. So I'm gonna need a pretty short Phillips to get in there, but we'll do that. And then there are a few wires. There's this black wire on this side, and then there's gonna be three gray wires that go to the various heating elements. And then we have these pink wires that go to those four connections there. So as part of this, I'm gonna grab some tape and I'm gonna tape off which wire goes to which element so I can make sure I get them reconnected in the right order. And I'll do the same thing for the wires that connect to the ends, because two pink wires coming in and four connections means these have to be hooked up in series. So we'll look at where the start and end looks like. They go kind of from the outside to the outside, and then the middle two are connected to each other. So I'll mark which one was connected to the nearest piece to me, the sensor right here, and we'll do the same on the other side. And I'm gonna do the same for the gray wires, 1, 2, 3, and then track them back the same way. So I've got a little bit of work to do. I'll get that bracket removed, get those wires labeled, and then we'll check back in. Okay, so I've got the wires labeled, so just little pieces of painter's tape with 1, 2, 3, and then I labeled the pink wire that connects to the closest point here. I did confirm there's just a jumper connecting the other two, so then the one pink wire that isn't labeled obviously goes in the rear point. So those are all done. I was able to loosen and remove that wire, or disconnect it so it's ready to be removed. And then I got the two screws in the brackets removed where they hook into the bottom of the dryer. This one on this side over here is really, really tight and very, very hard to do. I had to use a longer screwdriver kind of all the way up to the drum. I have seen comments online of people who had to take the drum out mainly to get to that screw. I don't think you do. I think you can get to it, but it is going to be a pain if it's anything like mine. So I'm gonna get these wires disconnected on the side, and we'll pull this whole element out. And we're gonna do that now that it's free, because it's not connected to the bottom anymore, by wiggling it forward out of this housing. Now that that screw is removed, we'll take it out, then we'll kind of just bend it and pull it out through this opening right here. Okay, so everything's disconnected. We do have to take this piece right here off in order to get into and then actually pull that out. You need enough room. And I struggled with this a little bit. There is the screw that we talked about that goes into this guy. There are 3 screws on the inside. You can see them right there. And there's this one right here, which messed with me for a little bit. You have to actually put the screwdriver in there facing back towards you to get to it. It is just a Phillips head, but know that there is that screw right there. Otherwise, this piece will not come off. So you have to do all of that in order to get this off and out of the way, and then that coil can get pulled out. Okay, so now that it is removed, we can talk about why this failed, and I can confirm that this is actually what failed is this part. And you can tell that by looking right down the center. So see how this is all warped and twisted and burnt, and the coils are all crazy and flexed, versus what it should look like. So what ends up happening is these overheat and then they bend because of the heat, and then this touches the side and grounds out, where these coils break and they start to fail. They're not actually even connected in the middle anymore. So this is all like charred and blackened on the inside from this failure versus, again, what this should look like. So my next step is going to be to get this one assembled. To do that, I'm going to take my 2 new sensors that it came with and mount them on the side. I need to do that anyway because I broke one of the ends off of this trying to get it off. These wires were insanely hard to remove. So I'll get those mounted the same way they are here. So I'll just replicate that for the 2 entries here. And then I'm going to move the mounting bracket off the bottom of this one. It's by flipping this over. It just has a couple screws right there. So I'll pull those 2 screws out and get that mounted onto this guy. Same 3 holes down there already pre-drilled for me. And then we'll be able to slide this in, and reinstallation's the reverse of how we took it apart. So we get all of the wires reconnected, get everything plugged back together, get all those pieces put back on. I'm probably gonna do another once over on vacuuming on the inside as well. So I'll get this all assembled and then we'll move to the next part. Okay, the bracket and the 2 sensors have been added to the new assembly. So now that is going to get placed back into the dryer and we'll start putting it back together. So these wires are kind of tricky to get to. My recommendation on this, and the way I'm going to do this, is just to kind of loosely place it in there, get all of the wires connected, and then position it, because otherwise you have very little clearance between these wires and the side wall of the unit. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So I'll kind of lay it in probably on its side just like you see it now, plug all those wires into it, and then just tilt it up and set it in place. Okay, the new coil is installed in our nice new clean or recently cleaned clothes dryer. So I've got the bracket reinstalled on the bottom. I've got all my wires reconnected off to the side. Next, I'm going to put this shroud piece back on, which again has that 1 screw that's captive, which is going to be a little tricky to get in there, looking at now how the heating element is in place. I'm going to have to come at it like this. And I may even have to unscrew this in order to get access to that screw. We'll kind of see as we go. And then the 3 up there requires somebody to push and hold that piece against the back of the dryer while you screw it in. And then remember that 1 screw down here that is longer than the others. So I'll get that piece put back on. Okay, our heat deflector, whatever you want to call this thing, is reattached. I did have to do the screw that's down in the bottom first and actually loosen up the bracket holding the heating element down in order to allow me to get access to that. Clearances were just too tight otherwise. So did that part first and then reattached everything, popped that in, got the 3 screws on the inside going. If you don't have somebody help you hold this, you can just sort of tape it together, which is what I did with some painter's tape. So that's all done. So now we can deal with putting the back on. And to do that, we're going to need to do a few things in order here. So I'm going to kind of move the top piece out of the way. We'll set the back piece in place, and then that gets flipped over top of it like it was and screwed down from the top, and then the cover can go on. So we'll set the back in place. I'll flip that over, screw that in to hold it. Then we'll get the power reconnected and kind of work our way back around. Okay, we've got the electrical reconnected. Back panel is back on. All the screws are back in place. Flipped this back down, put our screw in there and there. And there are 2 along the back as well. Now we can do the cover. For the cover, we're going to do exactly what we did before. We'll just set it on there, slide it forward, and then put the 2 screws in the back. And at that point, we're reassembled, and then I'll just clean up the space back there a little bit, get this slid back, plug back in, and try her out. Oh, would you look at that? 20 minutes into a drying cycle and no error message. So I think we can call this one solved. I'm gonna let that one complete just to make sure, but yeah, the heating coil on this was, I mean, severely messed up. It got scorch marks on the outside. A bunch of the wires, if you kind of look, are broken and mangled. Like, this was probably borderline dangerous at some point, which is probably why my dryer has been complaining for a little while about this thing failing. So not a hard project. Total, I think I spent 45 bucks on the kit, which included the coil as well as both of the sensors that you need. It does take quite a bit of time. I've been down here 3.5 hours. Granted, a decent amount of that was stopping to do video and looking through how I was going to explain some things, but it does take a bit of time. All you really need to do it is a screwdriver. Yeah, it's not much, at least on my washer, it's not much more complicated than that. And then it's just order of operations for working your way in and working your way out. So yeah, I'd say scale of 1 to 10, it's a 4. Complicated, but doesn't require any special techniques or hardware. You do have to buy the part. I'll link my kit that I used in the description below. It seemed to be of decent quality. I didn't see anything about it that I didn't like. It's generic, so kind of use your own judgment on that. And if there are longevity problems with it, I'll post in the comments if and when that happens. But otherwise, she's back and warming up, and yeah, life looks good. So this being the end of a DIY dad video, I of course owe you a dad joke. So what do you call a inquisitive monkey who loves to do the laundry? Curious George washing a ton. Right, remember, with any DIY project, it doesn't have to be perfect. Most important step is just to do it. Have a great day. Stay safe. Catch you on the next one. Bye.